Welcome to Being You, an SPH Productions presentation. My name is Shane Hodges, author of It's Time to Be You. My guest today is Paul J. Williams, actor, comedian, and classic car aficionado. Thank you so much for being here, Paul. How are you doing today?
I'm just great and I'm thrilled to be with you.
Excellent. I like to start off the show with a rapid fire Q&A where I get about 60 seconds to ask you as many questions as I can. Are you ready?
I love this. Bring it on.
First car,
A 1963 Dodge Dart.
an actor that inspires you.
Oh my gosh. Lily Tomlin and Robin Williams.
Love, yes. A cartoon you loved as a kid.
Bugs Bunny.
Who is your diva?
Oh, oh my gosh. Oddly enough, it's somebody that's not like a major superstar, but she's well known in the jazz world, Ann Hampton Callaway.
What's your favorite movie?
Ordinary People.
Best vacation destination?
I'm going to go with Palm Springs.
Nice. Hardest role you've ever played?
I did a one-man show called Bright Colors and Bold Patterns, and it was 90 minutes of just me, and that was quite an undertaking.
Oh, wow, I can imagine. Okay. Well, that was right about 60 seconds. We got through 7 questions, so congratulations. Our first segment is called You Do You. This is where we talk a little bit about your career and aspects of what you do. I first came to know you or meet you as Sister Helen Holy on a Vakaya cruise that we took several years ago. Can you tell us a little bit about Sister Helen?
So ages ago, back when singing telegrams were still a thing, I worked for this company. And it was about the time that Dana Carvey came out with Church Lady on Saturday Night Live. And the company asked me if I could imitate the character, and they would send it out for singing telegrams. I did it for about a year with the singing telegram company. And then I went out on my own. After a couple of years, I realized, you know what? I don't want to make money off someone else's creation. So I took all of Dana's stuff out of it. I repositioned her in the South. I made her Baptist because that was my background.
Right.
And just kind of, I don't know, kind of made it my own. It's my baby at this point. And that has been about 35 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
I just started out doing private parties, and I would do various things for the LGBT community, fundraisers, whatnot. Then I got hired on by RSVP Vacations in 2006 to not only be a host and cruise director, but also they wanted one of my characters to host bingo. And I said, I've got the perfect idea. So 19 consecutive years later, I'm still doing Helen on these LGBT cruises.
Wow. How are Sister Helen and Paul different?
It's really weird. I've gotten so comfortable with this character that I really, oddly enough, believe that we're two separate people. I think a certain way as her, and I think a certain way as me. I have had to adjust the character over the years. Heavy satire isn't as understood as it used to be. My thing with Helen was she is a bold satire of idiot religious people. My purpose being, let's turn the tables and make Helen the joke, or realize that this is all in fun and we can laugh at something that we know is not personal. And in this day and age, in the world that we're living now, there's getting to be more and more of that vitriol that's real. So I'm trying to pull back. It's difficult. It's a hard line to walk, but I am sensitive to that. She has always been based in heavy satire and
Mhm.
saying things that I would never say, but it's to prove the point of how
Mhm.
backwards what she's representing is, right?
And you introduce Sister Helen a certain way. Can you tell us how you make your intro as Sister Helen?
This is a disclaimer that I do when I start. And I'll do it in Helen's voice just so you'll understand, even though I don't look like her right now. My name is Sister Helen Holy. I'm with the First Southern Fried Self Satisfied Baptist Church. And because I am a Baptist, I am better than everyone in this area right now. And I am the only one going to heaven. Therefore, it is my duty as a Baptist to point out how I'm better than everyone here. And so when you leave today, if you have not been offended, you need to let me know, because that means I missed somebody. So, I'm setting up the idea that I want to be an equal opportunity offender. When I did Denver Pride with you guys,
Yep.
3,000 people in that park listening to me. And I was ragging on everybody. And the kids were eating it up.
Yep, exactly. Well, outside of Helen, what other things have been happening in terms of your life as a performer?
I do theater here in Dallas when I can, when the right show comes along. As I said, I still perform on the LGBT cruises. Now I'm with a company called Vakaya. I used to do stand up. For about 20 years, I was an openly gay stand up comic and had a ball. I was on a Logo TV special in 2009. I got to work Provincetown, but I got bored with my own act. And so I quit doing stand up and focused just on Helen. And
Gotcha.
I realized, look, if Barry Humphries, a straight Australian man, can make his fortune doing Dame Edna in
Yep.
drag, and he's not even gay, I should have no qualms about being known as this crazy character.
Hmm. That being said, as a performer, whether that is Sister Helen or beyond that, what would you like your legacy as a performer to be?
I want to be remembered as bringing laughter everywhere I could. I want to be remembered for being kind to people.
Nice.
When people think of me, I want them to smile.
Well, I can say for my husband and I, that is very much the case. And anyone I've seen cross your path, also, it seems the same. Thank you so much for sharing that aspect of your life. Now we want to move into our segment called Who Are You, where we get a little bit more personal. Now, you are a lover of classic cars. What make, year, and model is your favorite?
Well, right now, my favorite is the one I have, which is a 1970 Buick Riviera. I've named her Joan, as in Joan Rivers, but she's Joan Riviera. She is
Love it.
a powerful woman driven by comedy who's had a lot of work done. So it all makes sense.
So, when you first purchased the car, what shape was it in?
Really good. I
Wow.
bought it. I saw it on Facebook Marketplace. It was
Wow.
in Florida. I'm in Texas. But I reached out, and lo and behold, I was buying it from a gay man. And I thought, oh, well, I already feel better right here. But I bought it just based on pictures and his promises. And when it
I love
arrived at my house, I breathed such a sigh of relief because it was beautiful and everything he said it was.
nice. And how long have you had Joan?
I bought her in May of 2019, so 6 years.
Nice that you got her before we got into COVID so you guys could spend that
Yes.
time together. Well, I have also seen your Tales from the Airport videos on your socials. Talk to me a little bit about those and how those got started.
You know, I think the first one was in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was waiting on a flight to go back home. And there was a young woman sitting behind me talking to another lady. They didn't know each other. And in getting to know each other, the young woman said that she was finishing her graduate studies in psychology. And the woman said, "Where did you go to school?" She said, "I'm at Liberty University, Jerry Falwell's university." And I instantly thought, oh, dear God, don't let anyone go to her for counseling. So I thought, this conversation is getting good. So I pulled out my phone and put it on selfie. So
Mhm.
basically, you're seeing half my face with what's going on in the background. They're very brief, sometimes 5 seconds, sometimes
Mhm.
10 seconds. But I just see things at the airport that crack me up. I
Oh
have
yeah.
almost 50 episodes of Tales from the Airport at this point. And people
Wow.
say, you would go viral on Instagram. I just do this for my friends.
I did want to ask one thing related to the Sister Helen persona, but it's also personal, as you mentioned in the earlier segment. Helen incorporates a lot of biblical and religious quips and information. Where did your knowledge of religion and familiarity with the Bible come from?
My family. I was born into a Southern Baptist family. I grew up in a very large, pretty progressive church in San Antonio,
Okay.
Texas. So I didn't get a lot of hell and brimstone, but I did get a lot of Bible study. I got incredible music exposure.
Hmm.
I had two older brothers who were musicians. My grandfather was a church music director. All of this comes naturally to me. And then
Hmm.
on top of that, I went to Baylor University, which is the largest Southern Baptist university in the world, where you were required to take religion.
Hmm.
So it's just absorption over a lifetime.
So let me ask then, having had that experience both with regard to your family, but also from the education standpoint, how would you describe your religious beliefs?
It's been very interesting because over my decades of life, I have made quite a journey from here to there. Um,
Hmm.
I was such Bobby Baptist growing up. And even though I knew I was gay, I didn't know what it was, but I hid in the church. I tell people my closet had a steeple on it. And then after I got out of college and was on my own, I really started coming out of the closet vigorously.
Okay.
And over the years, I stopped going to church because I didn't want people telling me or feeling like I couldn't be who I was or my authentic
Hmm.
self, to be specific, because someone's not going to like the fact that I don't fit their interpretation of a good Baptist, right? So then I started going to other religions. But my belief system itself has gone through a lot. Uh,
Hmm.
to full on agnosticism, to I don't want to bother with a God that doesn't love
Hmm.
me. So screw it, basically. And
Nice.
I found a church here in Dallas.
Yeah,
The music is great. I look forward to going to church. So I
it
really
is
have come full circle.
nice. So, how old were you when you came out?
I would say I started the process at 19, um,
Okay.
probably between 19 and 20, but I was never completely, I'm a big homosexual because I was at
Hmm.
Baylor in Waco,
Right.
Texas in 1982.
Yeah.
But I mean, I didn't come out to my parents until I was 25. And it actually happened by accident, but it needed to. And
Okay.
over time, my parents became the most, I mean, they were a walking PFLAG chapter. It was just a miracle that
Nice.
happened. But I also think that my coming out challenge them to question their faith a little bit more. Why have
Okay.
they believed what they've always believed?
I
Every,
appreciate that question. That is a form of a question I push my clients to ask all the time, which is why? Why do I feel this way? Why do I believe this? Why does that bother me? And where did that come from? So I like that. I want to ask, how do you know when you are being less than authentic?
there's just something in me. I may not instantly recognize it, but if I'm trying to present myself as something I'm not, or
Mhm,
trying to fit in some place that is not necessarily authentic for me,
mhm.
I catch myself pretty quickly. That doesn't mean that I instantly stop doing it.
Mhm.
But then when I leave there, I'm like, why did I do that? You know, there was
Yeah.
a sliver of truth in what I may have said, but it's not authentic. I try not to do that, but I'm human. And sometimes we just fall into that trap.
So that brings us to our wow segment of the program, which is the words of wisdom. And I always like to ask, what would you like to say to others in terms of being your most authentic self and or advice for others?
So I have to start this with saying I need to be authentic about something we haven't covered, and that is I don't make my living as a performer. It is
Mhm.
a passion, it is an avocation which supplements my income quite nicely. I am a
Nice.
legal assistant for a corporate law firm. I've been at the same firm for 19 years now almost. And
Wow.
I am grateful for that. They know all about my comedy career. They know all about Sister Helen. They are very supportive.
Right.
And I have a very liberal personal time off policy, which allows me to do these cruises and do
Mhm.
whatever. And it has given me a comfortable life. So I want to be very clear about that, that I have friends who struggle to make ends meet as a performer, and I have
Yeah.
such mad respect for them. But that's not my story, you
I
know.
understand that. Yep.
So, having said that, my journey on authenticity started when I read the book The Velvet Rage.
Okay.
He discusses the three stages of authenticity. When I
Hmm.
said earlier about people who recreate their past, that's very much stage one. I cannot even accept who I am, right?
Right.
Stage two is okay, so I'm gay, so this is who I am, but I'm not going to be divided into a stereotype. I'm going to be masculine. I'm going to be muscled. I'm going to go to the circuit parties and do all the drugs I can to be included, but still not completely authentic. Whereas the third stage of authenticity is looking in the mirror and going, this is what I have to offer. This is who I am. Take it or leave it.
Yes.
And I got to level three relatively quickly.
That's
I
good to
never
hear.
was a circuit boy. I have my own journey with addiction
Mhm.
because, drugs are just a solution. They're not a problem. They're a solution to
Right.
something in here that you're unhappy with. And I think getting sober 10 years ago was a big part of me becoming more authentic, me becoming more real about who I am. So, if I were to give somebody advice for being who you are,
Mhm.
nobody says it better than RuPaul. How are you going to love somebody else if you can't love yourself? And loving yourself is so incredibly difficult because I
It
believe
is.
we all know our faults better than anyone else. And we
Absolutely.
assume that everyone else knows what they are as well. They may see
Yes.
us in a completely different light.
It really is, again, so liberating when you reach that point where you can acknowledge, I can't control certain things. And if I am just myself, other things, in my opinion and experience anyway, seem to fall into place.
Let me just add one thing. That is very much a tenet of 12-step work that you do in recovery. That is learning the difference between powerlessness and unmanageability. I used
Mm,
to think that the way my friends see me was unmanageable. No, I'm powerless over that. Unmanageable is how I spend my
yeah.
money,
Mm,
and learning the difference between those two. I'm powerless over the weather. I am powerless over the sun rising. you know,
yep.
I take care of what I can do and leave the rest to the universe.
Same. Most of the time, I would say. Some days I slip.
Yeah, I
Well,
agree.
that being said, what information would you like to share in terms of socials or calendar, where people can find you and get more information about your appearances and performances?
So I have a website, which is pauljwilliams.com. That's the initial J, not the word. I also have a website called helenholy.com. It really directs
Love
to the
it.
same website, basically. That's where you can find all the basics about me, how you can contact me, see publicity photos, and all that kind of stuff. My How do you keep up with me on a regular basis is
Mhm.
Facebook and Instagram. I'm a
Okay.
boomer, so I'm big on Facebook. I have learned from the kids that I met in Denver at Pride that I got to have bigger Instagram presence because they're the ones that follow me there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in
Yeah.
both cases, I have a presence and Helen has a presence. So Paul J.
Gotcha.
Williams on Facebook, Helen Holy on Facebook, PJ Funny One on Instagram, and Sister Helen Holy on Instagram.
Okay. Again, thank you so much for doing this with me, Paul. Always a pleasure to catch up with you. Love Sister Helen. Always have a good time chatting with either of you. Thank you so much for being here.
And let me say this to anyone who's listening or watching, get his book. It is a wonderful way to get to know yourself by asking the important questions about your life that you may have never thought to ask. So I just want to plug that.
I very much appreciate that, Paul. Thank you all for watching. Have a great day, everybody. Love yourself. Be yourself. Again, Shane Hodges, author of It's Time to Be You, How to Become Your Most Authentic Self. Hope everybody does what you want to do today. Take care of yourselves.